We're going to go back to recording. So, hope everybody got a little breather, a little break, or a little time to refocus. And so, what we're going to talk about, this is probably, I don't know if this is the only time, this is the main time where I'm actually going to go back through the PowerPoint that I created for you because there are usually a lot of questions about the soul itself. So I want to go back through that PowerPoint. I won't go through it. Well, I'll probably go through it a little bit and just to help people understand. But you have the video in the module area that you can go back and listen to as well. And I'm going to add a little bit of anecdotal information along the way because this is really, like I said, soul basics here in getting people started and understanding what that essence of who we are really is. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Excuse me. And there we go. All right, so I'm going to move you guys over here. And this is the challenge. When I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation, I can't always, and if I move everything over to the side, I can't always see who's got their hand up. So I'm going to kind of move you over just a little bit so that I can see where the hands still are. So I'm going to go through this PowerPoint a little bit just to help you understand the basics of the soul. Again, what it is not. There's a lot of confusion. In fact, I had a talk, oh gosh, earlier this week with one of the alignable groups, and I was helping people understand what the soul is and what it was not. And one of the people in the group said, gosh, I've been confused about that for years. So even if you do soul work, it's just really important to kind of go through this and just get a feel for how it is that you can provide this information to other people. So let me put this up here too. I can move that bar up. Oh, no, I can't move that bar up. I used to be able to move that bar up. There we go. So what is a soul and why is it important to understand it? To me, again, the soul is the most important thing for us to understand. It is the core of everything. It's the core of body, mind, and soul. We have to really get to that point. So I put this together for you to understand a little bit more. And feel free, like I said, to raise your hand if you have a question, because I want to go through this information, and yet I also want this to be highly interactive. So we talked about what's going to be in this course. I don't have to go through this page again. This I do want to go through. This is something that I think is really important for people to understand that, Hippocrates, the father of medicine, and I love sharing this information because it shocks people, but, the father of medicine way back 2,500 years ago basically said that the soul is present in every organ and in every illness. So the ancients knew that the soul was there. They knew it was present. All of his buddies. So when I say his buddies, so Socrates, Hippocrates, Galen, who is one of the physicians that is going to provide some information that you'll be a little bit curious about. Plato, I mean, all of the philosophers, all of the scientists, all of the physicians of the time knew that the soul was a very important thing. And yet it's nowhere to be seen in traditional training at the moment. Now, this is pretty cool information when you think about it, is that, Hippocrates himself said a physician without the knowledge of astrology has no right to call himself a physician. Now, physicians of today would completely argue with that because astrology is nowhere in the training. They would basically dismiss it as a non-science, even though it's been around for thousands and thousands of years. So far before modern medicine has ever evolved, astrology was there and present. He also said it is far more important to know what sort of a person has the disease than to know what sort of disease a person has. So again, he was much more involved and interested in learning about the soul, teaching others how to really attend to the soul. And yet when we think about how training is created now, modern medicine is, again, I was a medical school professor, excuse me, and it is not taught at all to be a spiritual person. It is very much disassociated from what modern medicine is. And so we have to get back to that place. Carl Jung, for those of you who are therapists or soon to be therapists, one of the founding fathers of psychology around the 1900s. Now, he was born, I think, in the 1980 something. I can't remember exactly his date of birth. But he also knew that the soul was present in everything. In fact, he was the one who created the theory of consciousness. And again, for those of you who are going to be doing psychological training, you're going to understand even more about this from just reading his theory, but you're also going to be shocked that the soul is really never talked about. Now, again, this is to me really important to understand because he also talked a lot about his past life memories. He traveled because of his past life memories. He did a lot about his work because of his past life memories, but none of that is taught in psychological traditional training. He also used astrology as part of understanding the soul's path, but again, nowhere to be found in modern day. Now, again, I love this image because the so-called idea that the human body is still evolving, but what's evolving into cyborgs. So in other words, we have all these robotic kind of situations here, but from what they say in science, the human body has evolved about as much as it's going to. However, the soul's growth and the evolution is infinite. It goes on and on. You cannot eliminate energy. You can just change it. And so again, a little bit later, we're going to talk about this. Now, I have a little bit of an association and maybe a slight obsession with Yoda, just because he is considered the oldest soul of all of the entities that were on Star Wars. The soul is talked about as the substantial entity within a person, spiritual and emotional part of a person, and it's the animate existence. And that's the word I want to really emphasize from the way, way, way back types of the definitions. It's just the animated part of it. It's what drives us. It also, and I love this, and I said this in the video, is that the original word was basically said to be coming from or belonging to the sea. And it's that whole idea of how the energy flows within us, how it infiltrates every aspect of who we are. So I love this concept as well. It's the non-material essence of a person. So when someone asks me what the soul is, I talk about the essence of who a person is. And I make a very big point of saying it's not religion. And I don't use this in a religious term. I talk about the essence of who we are. And that is the aspect of us that animates us. And that is also the aspect of us that holds all of the information from past, present, and future. When I say future, is that, we do have a soul path and we have somewhat of a destiny that we do follow, whether we think so or not, but we still have free will that dictates where that future goes. And so I'm going to help you understand that a little bit along the way as well. More about the history of souls. So it's the immaterial aspect. It's that essence of us who survives physical death. Now, I actually want to share a personal story here that I did not share in the video. And this has to do with the energetic aspect that survives after physical death. So I've had multiple experiences of my father's energy showing up, my mother's energy showing up. But I want to share this story in particular. My mother, she was 86 when she passed. She will have, it'll be 10 years. 10 years this September since she passed away. And I was going back and forth to Colorado to help for those last few years, trying to help relieve my siblings as well as help her, of course. And the very last time I went there, it was her 86th birthday. I wanted to be there for her 86th birthday, even though she was really close to passing and making her transition. And the first thing she said when I got there was, she said, "I just want you to sit by my bed and hold my hand." And they had moved a hospital bed into her room. And so, because she was on so many pain meds, I pulled up a chair, turned out the lights, put her to bed at about 6:30. That's about as long as she could handle staying up. And had my hand on her hand, and my phone was on my lap because I thought, well, I don't know what I'm going to do while I'm waiting to go to bed myself. But I want to share this because it was so poignant and it was so much proof of the soul and the energy in which it holds. She would have these experiences where her body would jerk. She'd open her eyes. She'd look at me. She'd kind of get a very faint smile. She would tighten her grip, and then she'd go back to sleep. And I just sat there just in the dark, I'm not doing a whole lot, but at one point I went to look at my phone and I had gotten a text from one of my friends that lives here. And she said, "Oh, I just want to check in with you, see how you're doing. How's your mom doing?" And I texted back to her, "I think my mom's soul is testing leaving her body." And my friend Kim said, "Oh, well, that's interesting. I look forward to hearing about that." I didn't text anything else. I was probably, I don't know, looking through news. I don't know what I was doing at the time. I was texting probably a few other friends. The next morning, I had gotten my mom up for breakfast. She was in her wheelchair. I was sitting on her bed. And, at that point, she wasn't eating very much. She wasn't very clear in her thinking. Her thoughts were very muddled. And very clearly, she looks at me and she said, "Catherine, I want to thank you for something." And I said, "Oh, sure. What's that?" Thinking that it was for the flowers that I brought her or something else. And she said, "I want to thank you for telling me what my body was doing last night." And I remember sitting there going, wow, she read my texts because I did not say those words out loud. I did not have the any verbal kind of exchange. So her soul somehow read my texts. And so that's sort of that essence of the soul. That's the essence that leaves the body and basically does have an experience without the human body. And had I had my wherewithal, I would have asked her how she knew that because I did not ask her at the time. I just said, "Oh, Mom, I'm really glad that was helpful for you." And she said, "It was so helpful. Thank you." And then she kind of went off into her kind of glazed over energy again. And I'm sitting there thinking, wow, okay, I mean, I know this stuff exists. I've experienced it many, many times before with other souls, including my dad. But when my mom saw my text message, it's like, okay, there's proof right there. So, for a lot of the people that have never believed beyond science, it is not usually until they have an experience of their own, either a near death experience or experiencing a soul coming to them or some other, energetic exchange. It's not till then that they prove to themselves that there's something beyond the science. So I wanted to share that right there. And I do have to share this because as soon as she said that, I immediately thought, oh gosh, what else was I texting? Because I didn't want her to have read whatever else I was texting. I don't know what I was texting. I'm sure it wasn't bad, but it was one of those things where when you know that that stuff happens, it's like then you start thinking in a whole different way. So I just wanted to share that story. And we can talk about that a little bit later because many of you might have had some of those experiences. So the definition of the soul has not really changed over time. What has changed is whether or not it is acknowledged in science and medicine. And we've already kind of talked about that. But it's really important, again, for us to start thinking about the fact that this is not new age stuff. This is going back to where it all began. So the reality is that the soul does need to make a comeback. For those of you who are going to be working with people moving into the future, you have to remember that about, depending on the research, up to 90%, a little bit after that, maybe 92% of people would like their practitioners and coaches to acknowledge the soul as part of the work that they do. And less than 5% of practitioners do. I think there are many, many reasons for that. But we have to emphasize the fact that there are many, many kinds of practices, and I'm just going to zoom through some of this. Many practices that people are already seeking, soul healing practices, because they're not getting what they need in modern medical environments, modern psychological environments. So behind the backs of their practitioners, they're actually seeking some of this work. So again, the essence of the soul is really just who that person is, and it carries all of the information from every lifetime all the way up to now. And like I said earlier, it's really about flipping through the person's chapters of a life and chapters of lifetime. So it's everything that is collectively coming together to make that soul, to basically season that energy of that imprint of who that person is. So if there's 8.6 billion people on this planet, each one of them has a unique soul. As you go through this 6 months, you're going to understand your own core identity beyond what you've been told, beyond what you've been conditioned to be able to think or do. And the primary reason, and now I remember, and I think I said this in the video, I remember someone asking me in a session at the very end of the session, Dr. Kelly, what do you think the mission of every person on this planet is? And I very quickly said to find our truth and keep it. Because if you think about how much society plays a part, family programming plays a part, our experiences playing a part, we get layered upon layered upon layered of things that don't fit who we are, which is also why we feel weary. And we're going to talk a lot more about that in the psychological branch to help you understand how much we get programmed to believe we are when we're actually not. Another way that I try to help people understand the soul is that is the central processing unit. So it's kind of like the chip in a computer. It basically stores all this information, but it also drives everything. Every thought, every behavior, every reaction. It's basically that central processing unit. And again, it is the experience of something. It is not something that can be fully intellectually defined, which is why I keep talking about this in so many different ways. I've already said the soul can't be taught on paper. So let me go back to this. And that you're going to be experiencing several methods of accessing the soul, teaching other people how to use the soul, understanding what that core of that person is, and that's going to help you integrate even more. So if you think about the soul, it's everything that makes us tick. So it's everything that drives us to live, everything that drives every action, but it also drives all that holds us back. And that's the part where I think it's really going to be important for practitioners, coaches to understand that the blockages of who we are primarily soul-based as well. And I think there might be something in the chat that I want. Okay, so my soul is who I am before culture and society impacts how I express my answers. Yes. Yes. So your soul is who you are before you get layered upon by culture, by family values, by family disturbance or dysfunction. Your soul is the essence, and our job is to clean out what doesn't fit. And so it's our job to clean out what is no longer fitting us. And that's where the evolution aspect comes from. So I hope that helps. And so anybody else who wants to put information in the chat, I'll try to see when it comes in. So absolutely. So yes, it's all that holds us back. So any blockages, anytime that we have something that we trip over, or we just, we keep doing over and over and over again, it's something that is programmed into us that is what I call an energetic imprint. We're going to talk a lot about that last, hour of this session, because until you understand that these energetic imprints really season who we are, you're not going to know how to unlock those things either. So it's the root or the core voice within. So, a lot of people talk about that quiet voice within, and it is the quiet voice within. And what I'm going to help you do is tune up that dial. It's like I want you to help you really hear that in a louder way, an automatic way, rather than having to stop and really do these deeper exercises. I can't tell you how many times my soul speaks through the day because it guides what I do. If I'm grabbing for a cookie that I don't need, I can hear from a soul level, you don't really need that. And so I get it in that way. I get it from the way of, that reaction of, oh gosh, something feels wrong here. I'm not going to do this. It's guiding us at all times, and I want to help you get to that. So it's that gut instinct. And this is something I want to really emphasize too, is that it is also the bed of regret. So regret comes from when we go against our soul. Our regret and our remorse go against when we actually betray our soul. When we go against what our gut is telling us, it is a form of betrayal. And that's why a lot of people have such a hard time forgiving themselves, as that their soul has been bruised or wounded by themselves in many ways. And so you have to go through and heal that form of the energetic imprint that is left, so that you can lift that off of you as well. So I hope that makes some sense. We'll talk more about that too. Oops. Let me go back here. I actually just really loved this graphic, but it is the unique part of us that influences our thoughts, behaviors, and decisions. But we have to take a look at ourselves. One of the things that is, I think, the hardest thing to do ever is to turn a mirror on ourselves and gaze. Now, literally and figuratively. So when I encourage a client or a patient to literally stand in front of a mirror and look into their own eyes, most people don't want to do it because it's powerful and it's scary and it's overwhelming. And yet that is I think it's one of the hardest things to do beyond anything else we have to experience, because we have to look at our own soul at some point. And yet it's also the most beautiful thing. Once you get to know your soul, you realize that purity that is within you that might have been tainted by your human experience, but it really takes you to a whole new level when you can get there. So, and I did say this, I believe, on the video, that one of the things that I talk about is I do everything through energy. So I sense energy, I read through energy, I speak through energy. When I am in front of an audience, I think my biggest group is like 600 people. And it's like I sense the energy and I read the energy, but everything I do is energy, which can be good and bad. So for people who are empaths, you have to learn how to filter your energy because otherwise you're going to be getting a lot of the negative in as well. But what I tell people when I'm scheduling an Akashic record reading or a soul realignment session or soul coaching, for the first time with someone, I have a phone conversation with them because I want to tune into the energetic signature of their soul. When you start to do that, once you start to tune in, you will understand much more and much more intuitively what's going on with that person. Um, and each one of us has a very unique energetic signature. It comes through our voice, it comes through our energy field, it comes through our bioenergetic field, it comes through so many different things. And I think once you tune that dial, you're going to get so much further, both for yourself and for others, in understanding. And levels 2 to 4 are going to help you really read that energy a lot more, because I think that's part of this is we can again teach a lot of the heady stuff, but until I teach a lot of the intuitive kind of skills too, um, you won't you'll be able to get to a certain point, but not as probably far as some of you want to. So it is also the energetic storage unit. And so, energy itself, the soul itself cannot be measured. It can't be contained. And yet, boy, does it hold so much information. It's just the energetic storage system of every experience that we have ever had. And just because we are in a new human body within each lifetime does not mean that we haven't carried along any of the seasoning, any of the patterning, any of the wounds. And that's where we have to start to look at the storage unit and see what we need to clear out and clean out so we can get back to what I call radiant living. And so I try to help people understand it's somewhat like the cloud storage, that, somewhere in the sky, your computer uploads all this information and stores it there. It's a very similar concept that your soul, actually, your very soul, holds all of the information from past, present, and sort of future, like I mentioned before. It is not a religious term. I always talk about the fact that the soul is so religion is created for us, whereas spirituality is what we create for ourselves. So it's this whole idea that it's not really a spiritual, excuse me, it's not really a religious term, because the soul is not created for us. We actually we co-create our soul as part of what source needs, and we're going to talk about this in a second, what source needs, what your soul parents need, and basically help you understand that this is, again, I don't ever go to the religion piece, even though there's lots of religions that don't even talk about the soul itself. Christian Bible mentions the soul at least 700 times, never really explains what it is. They just assume. And like I said, many religions don't even talk about the soul. They don't talk about the soul's evolution. They don't talk about how it works. And I mentioned this earlier. So the word soul and psyche, if you look it up in Webster's dictionary, oftentimes those words are in the same category, and they're actually not. So I want to emphasize this now, is that the psyche is the entirety of our intellectual experience. So our memories, our thoughts, our cognitions. It has nothing to do with basically our soul, except that the soul is informed by our psyche. So our psyche, our mind, and our body inform our soul. But it is not the entirety of it. The soul reflects and operates through the entirety of all that we are, which is why we can have health problems. And we're going to, again, explore that a whole lot during that physical branch of healing when we talk about that in, I think, 3 weeks. So the soul encompasses every aspect of who we are. That's the mind-body connection. That's the mind-body-soul connection. But it is a separate thing from the soul, or excuse me, separate thing from the psyche, but it is not the same thing. It is also not our spirit. Now I'm going to explain that a little bit more, because the soul and the spirit are often interchanged. The higher self is often interchanged. They're separate kind of entities, but they're all related. So the spirit is the energetic connection between our soul and source, and it can receive guidance. And this is an important thing to underline. The spirit can receive guidance outside of us through our guides, our angels, ascended masters, source, God is in there also. But the soul really only receives guidance from within. And what I mean by that is it's the soul that is trying to guide you in general, but our spirit is where it brings in information from external from us. So a lot of people interchange those, and I want to have a conversation about that when we open this up in just a few minutes. But you have to know that our soul and our spirit, our higher self, they all work in tandem for the highest good of the individual, but they're different ways to access each. And so, again, this is something that will be more clearly defined later. Our soul is not our intuition. So intuition is a function of the soul, and it's a function of our higher self and our spirit, but it is not the soul. So intuition does not equal the soul. Our soul is a sense of knowing, whereas intuition has more a sense of knowing and maybe bringing in information, predictions, projections sometimes. But a lot of people consider the intuition to be related. This is where it's science. They're trying to figure out where intuition is coming from. They relate it to the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is like way back in the middle of the head. And I don't want to get totally into the science of that because of the fact that I'm just trying to make the point that the soul is different than intuition. It's a function to intuition as a function of the soul, but it's not the soul itself. So I try to bring this in there that another way to look at it is that many believe that God is all knowing about everything around us, but the soul is all knowing about everything within us. And that's a way to help you understand that, okay, the soul is there to guide your being forward, guide you moving forward, if you are there to use the information in that way. Oops, it is not our heart. This is another part that I try to remember to tell people is that our heart can lead us wrong. Our head can lead us wrong. Our heart can lead us wrong. Our soul, our gut, that voice of the soul never leads us wrong. It only knows truth. But our heart has a lot to do with the lessons that we're here to learn. We can love someone even if they're really unhealthy for us. We can love a situation even if it's really unhealthy for us. So everything that's related to loving something or being a part of something from a loving perspective does not necessarily mean that it is the healthiest thing for us, which means it is not the same thing as the soul as far as I'm concerned. Our heads, again, can lead us wrong. Our hearts can lead us wrong. But the soul is the deepest knowing, and it is not influenced by outside sources. It is also, as we said, not a physical aspect, organ, or thing, but the soul does influence every aspect, organ, or thing, meaning body memory, illness, pain. Sometimes in my own life, I've had some things that would trigger me. I used to have migraine headaches, and I figured out the migraine headaches would come on at a certain kind of combination of factors in my life. And once I started eliminating those factors, one of which being a certain kind of stress that was going on at the time, once I eliminated that, I realized the mind-body connection cleared that for me. So my soul was not trying to get my attention anymore to change some things in my life because I had already changed them. So the mind-body reaction, we're going to talk a lot about that when we talk about the physical branch of health, because I cannot tell you how many of our illnesses are soul-based. And so once you illuminate that, you're going to be able to understand that. So this is the interesting thing. So in the 400s of BC, Galen, one of the physicians at the time, literally tried to dissect bodies to figure out where the soul was. Not obviously didn't happen. They couldn't find it because it's an energetic aspect of who we are. Others have tried to measure how much the soul is or how much it weighs when it leaves the body. And this information is really interesting. And I just realized I have a typo here. So his name was Duncan McDougall. I think it was right around 1909 when this study was done. But he basically tried to weigh people as they were passing and making their transition to see what would happen with the fluctuation of weight. Now, he came up with the fact that the soul weighed 21 grams, and he basically put their hospital beds on top of some sort of giant scale and tried to measure that. Now, my thought with that is a giant scale in those days is probably not going to be, this is the research part of me, a giant scale in those days is not going to be overly accurate. So you kind of have to think about the fact that it probably was not very well done anyway, but also this study's never been replicated. So this information has been sticking around for a very long time. And yet it's really, number one, from a research perspective, you can't really measure it in that way. Secondly, there's no control study going on. Thirdly, those scales at the time probably weren't very accurate. And also this 21 grams kind of thing, it's just never been replicated. So you can't really say that, although that information is still flipping around. So it's not really measurable. There's no personality test. There's no blood test. There's no x-ray you can do. It's definitely not a material thing. It's not fully definable. And even though I'm sitting here trying to define this for you, it's only knowable. And that, like I said, once you have the experience of the soul, you know it exists, but sometimes we try to explain it in other ways. It's not an intellectual concept, although we can think a lot about it. Excuse me. And like I've said before, when I said earlier that, people like even Alexander, he was a neuroscientist of some sort. I can't remember what kind he was. He dismissed the soul until he had a near-death experience. And so for him, suddenly he now had this awakening and had this experience of something beyond the science. And then he became some wonderful author and speaker out there because he is now talking about the soul. So it's really an experiential aspect of who we are. It's not destructible. You cannot destroy a soul, but you can't destroy a soul, but you can definitely fragment it. Energy can't be destroyed. It just transforms. It just moves into a different form of some sort. And so we do have to think that the body and the mind are destructible, but the soul actually is not destructible. It is, however, you can fracture it, you can fragment it, you can wound it. And that's really what we're here to talk about, is helping people understand how does a soul become unpure? How does it become fractured or fragmented in a way that we will be trying to heal? Therapists, that's really what we're trying to heal. Physicians, they're trying to heal the soul in a way just very, very indirectly. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Let's see here. I'm just going to go back down to this real quick, that nobody functions without a soul, even though not every soul on this planet ascribes to a certain kind of religion. So even if a person is catatonic or in a coma, they're still having some sort of soulful experience at the time. I have to say this just because if you look at this face and try to tell me that there's no soul in this little face, I would argue very quickly. So every living being or creature has some form of soul because they all have energy. Now, they may be conscious or in different levels, but there is a consciousness between different kinds of things. Now, I want to point out trees for a second. I'm also obsessed with trees. I love trees, love leaves. There is beautiful research coming out in the last 20 years of how trees communicate below the surface. It's amazing to watch because basically they're finding that there's a very integral and complex communication system between trees through their root systems. And it's not just nutrients, it's basically the electric energy that goes between them. So there's lots of research out there. And I think if they ever get to the point of understanding the connective energies of the soul, then we will be making a huge leap in basically our understanding. I was just checking. Okay, let me go to this chat for a second. Same as mushrooms, yes. So there's a lot of information coming out there about any plant energy and the energy that's happening below the surface, and also with spores and things like that. There's an exchange that happens, definitely. So I will keep trying to remember to look at the chat in here. All right, so for those of you who watch these videos already and also do soul work of your own, I would love to hear your thoughts on all of this, because I try so many people over the years have asked me to try to explain the different levels of our experience of the spiritual world. I don't like the word hierarchy, but I will use that word because it's like a step all the way up from our soul to source. And so the soul is the essence of who we are as an individual. So it is the core of the individual. And yet, every one of those cores is connected to the other souls on the planet, energetically speaking. And so, for those of you who are empaths and are feeling a lot of the heaviness that's going on in the world right now, or feeling particularly tired at times or particularly stressed, but you don't really know why, it's partially because you're bringing in and you are really tuning into the connective energies that are out there. And so, even though we have these individual souls, they can be negatively or positively impacted by every other soul on this planet. Does that make sense? So, right now, in particular, we are being challenged to make sure that we are taking care of our own individual soul as much as possible. So, the soul, again, is like sort of that encompassing essence of who we are, but our individual spirit is that soul, so that unique energetic core, plus the energetic influence of our higher self, our guides, our ascended masters, God, universe, and source. So it's like the conduit. Our spirit has this filter system, basically, down to our soul of information. And so when we are in tune with our spirit, I always say they. I don't say it. I don't say spirit. I say they because I feel like there's a collective energy of information that's coming in. And here's the caveat: when we are in tune with our own soul and grounded in our own soul, we're much more able to filter out the negative energies that might be coming in addition to the information of the beings or the sources that are there to help us. So, for those of you who understand like negative energies and how we can be under psychic attack or how we can be overwhelmed by other souls, it's that whole idea of it's through our spirit that we have those attacks, or we have where people, souls, spirits, negative entities can infiltrate our spirit to get down to our soul level to make us feel unhealthy. Now that's a whole different topic, but I got asked that question just the other day, and I wanted to make that clear to people. It's our soul is it's kind of an entity of itself, but our individual spirit, it's kind of like that filter system. It's like how can I say this? An energetic communication system between all of the other entities that are here for us, but that's where some of the negative energies can get to us as well. And I'm going to open this up for questions and discussions in a minute. Our higher self is not the same as the soul, but it is, again, it's something that influences the soul. So again, hard to understand, but I want to point this out, that the essence of our soul and our ascending and evolving beingness is what makes up our higher self. So our higher self is different than our spirit, is different than our soul, but it's also this aspect of us that almost watches us from above at all times and kind of monitors what's going on, because the higher self is what is here to, it's not the ego, but it's also here to help us understand how we need to protect ourselves, how we need to defend ourselves, and also what we are here to learn and bring in. So our higher self is another aspect that's a little hard to understand, but is our beingness. Our higher self is our beingness in a collective of the soul's aspects as well. And I know I'm just kind of running through this, so this can get very confusing. The gods that are out there. So God is not the same as source. It's not the same as the universe, but God is basically, in some ways, a humanly created idea. And I'm not saying there's not an energetic quality to it at all, but it's an energetic idea to help basically make it more tangible for someone to be guided. Because a lot of times we do need something outside of ourselves to guide us, because the fact that, again, if we're not in tune with our souls, we're not guiding ourselves from within. So in Christianity and other kinds of religions, it's been created as a creator or a ruler of the universe and all, encompassing kind of supreme being. But this is my take on the world, is that with all of the gods that are supported and believed in and worshiped around the world, there's got to be something even greater than those gods that created all of them. So there's another level beyond that. And, I know that can be really hard if you have a very strong Christian basis or a very strong Muslim basis or really any of the different religions, but you have to realize that there's something bigger than God that created all of those, but it's something that creates guardrails. And this is where I try to help people understand is a lot of times people need guardrails. They need some rules to follow in order to kind of keep them packaged in a place that they can get through life. I am not dissing religion. I actually grew up Catholic and I loved the ritual. The ritual was beautiful. There was a lot I didn't agree with and didn't make sense to me. But those guardrails can be very, very helpful for people. So there's a difference between our individual spirit and spirit as a source. And what I mean by that is a lot of times I will say, well, spirit told me this, spirit guided me this, and I know it's not my soul speaking. It's basically the collective energies that are there to help me. So whether it's my ascended masters, whether it's my guides, whether it's a combination, whether it's whatever, it's like there is a difference between the individual spirit and basically the overall spirit. But it's the collective energies. And so, like I said, when I hear spirit, I hear they. I hear multiple voices condensing or funneling or distilling into one message. And that's because we all have guides, we all have energies around us that are constantly trying to help us if we learn to listen. And so that's where spirit comes in. It's all funneled in. Universe, again, feels like a substantive matter when we really think about it, but it's all existing matter, space, considered as a whole, the cosmos, anything that collectively pulls in, we consider to be universe. But then again, even higher than that and most incomprehensible for most people is the idea of source, because we all want to know where source came from, but there's really no answer to that. So a lot of times it's one of those things where we have to get comfortable with where we gain our information because, like I said, the idea of source is so incomprehensible for so many people. But source has created all. God has not necessarily created all, but source has created all. Because source is really, again, I don't like the word hierarchy, but source is really at the top of the rung, and it's really what created everything. You may or may not need to actually understand all this and know this, but it's helpful to kind of get a kind of a field of knowledge about this because you may be asked about these kinds of things in the future, and you can just decide how much those people need to know because it's one of those things where I think the curiosity is beautiful, but it may not be tangible or useful to really understand all this because we are still here to do the human condition. We are still here to understand what those human aspects are and what our challenges are. And I think there's a point where we can get so disconnected by it by trying to go too far to spirit that we forget that we're here to be human as well. So and there's something called spiritual bypassing. Actually, I'm going to go back to that for a second. Spiritual bypassing is a term that you may or may not have heard of. And spiritual bypassing basically means that people are trying to find a spiritual reason for everything without doing their human condition. And that's a big thing to think about is that, I live in the spiritual world, but I do the human condition. I still have to do all the human condition kinds of things. And I'm very human in some of my human responses. But if I tried to put everything over to spirit, even though I can interpret everything to spirit, it would mean that I wasn't doing the human condition, that I wasn't actually experiencing the human life and doing it. I still have to learn how to overcome bad habits. I still have to learn how to maneuver certain things in life. And we can't always put it on spirit to do the work. We still have to do it ourselves. So spiritual bypassing is a big topic that we can talk about later. So why is it so important for us to bring the soul back? Just like Hippocrates said, it is so important to know who the person is. And we can only know it from a certain level if we go by traditional means. It is about understanding the energetic uniqueness of every individual, understanding their soul's path, understanding that, everybody has something different that goes into whole person health, and that it's the only way that whole person health can be basically obtained is when we understand what has gotten us from feeling scraggly and bedraggled all the way to what will get us to feeling well. So there's lots of different reasons for this as well. So, and again, why else? Healthcare and mental health care began with the soul. We need to bring it back. It has to be embraced, understood, interpreted. But it's one of those things where it's just part of health and healing. But it's the deepest part, and it's going to be really important for people to take that to the next level. It is, and I want to emphasize this, we will not achieve radiant health without understanding the state of our soul, because it's usually the state of our soul that needs the most attention, not so much the human condition. Um, and as I said, millions of people are already seeking soul-based care, which I think, is why many of you are already here. But again, this is about starting to understand the soul from a whole new level for yourselves, taking you to that next step. Like you already know, this is going to be more of a personal journey, going to guide you on your professional journey. Again, just to sum this up, the soul is a unique energetic aspect of who we are as humans. The soul never dies, and it becomes part of us, but it also lives on and on and on. And I'm going to go back to my mom for a second because it was really interesting. My mom so I was the oldest soul in my family, but the youngest of the children. And I came to understand what my role was within the family. And one of the interesting things is in doing some past life work, I figured out that I was always my mom's mom in past lives. So in this life, when she relied on me so much, and I was the youngest of the kids, and I'm like, why are you relying on me? And same thing with my dad. He relied on me for a lot. But about 3 years after she passed, I was leaving my driveway. And I was doing a lot of my healing work about our relationship and things like that. But I was leaving my driveway on the way to work. And I had some communication with her soul after she passed anyway. I was leaving my driveway, and her soul comes in and she says, will you be my guide when I come back? And first of all, I was like, okay, I didn't know at the time that my human entity could still be in spirit and be doing guide work. It was one of those interesting things. But we had this conversation all the way to work. It's about a 15-minute drive, and her soul and mine had a conversation. But I knew at that point that she was getting ready to come back. So she came back about 4 years after she passed, and right now she's about 5 years old. So it's a really interesting thing. But the reason I'm saying that is that that soul never dies, it just goes on. And we have these layers and these overlapping realities of when that soul comes back. So many more stories. But the soul is also the most neglected or dismissed aspect of both who we are and what we do as part of healing. And it has to make that comeback. It has to come back. And you know all of that. So I'm going to skip that now. Let me get out of here. Okay. And all right. So, all right. That was a lot of information, but I want us to have a conversation just briefly before I go into this next part of understanding energy. What do you have questions about? What are you boggled about? What are you now like, oh, wow, that's really interesting, but I thought something different. Let's flesh this out, because to get us started, it's going to be really important to understand the soul. And if someone has a different idea of what the soul is, I'm happy to hear that as well. But this is like the easiest way for me to explain what I know. Yeah, Carol.
I resonate with everything and all the definitions. It makes perfect sense to me. I just had a question based on what you just said about your mother's soul coming back. And my grandmother came in when I had a psychic reading with somebody else, and thanked me for healing the family lineage and all the work I've been doing to do that on the quantum field and other ways. And now I wonder if because I don't have soul connection with my mother that I'm aware of at this time, but if she were to be alive again, would her soul journey be different because of that healing work?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I
Absolutely.
assumed, but yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad you asked that question. So when you think about and like I said before, our job is really to clean up what we've been mucked up by.
Hmm.
And so anything that does not resonate with who we are really is there as rummage. It's like, or what am I saying? Rubbish. Wow, my brain is like locking, but it's there to be cleaned up.
Rubbish, is that what you mean?
Yes, my brain
Yes.
is. That's so funny how your brain thinks one thing, but it's like that doesn't feel right. Yes, so that's what ancestral healing is really all about. And man, I'm so pleased to see the books that are coming out, the information that's coming out, because we can have experiences in our current life that are laced with the ancestral trauma, with the ancestral kind of lineage, whatever it is. And I honestly believe, Carol, and all of you, that a big part of, I think, what this era is about for people who are conscious beings is that we've gone through a lot of trauma. And yet, I really believe that this is the era where the souls have come back to do a lot of that healing work to clear the slate for previous generations. Because as we evolve into the next generations, man, if we drag all that stuff in, we're going to have a terrible experience in our next lives, but we're also going to have a terrible experience as a world. And, that's where I think this level of consciousness is coming full circle for us to go, yeah, let's clean this up. So any soul that is doing trauma work right now for themselves or others is really helping clean up those past levels and layers so that we clean the slate to move forward. That's what the new earth is about. That is what this new level is all about. So yes. And I have had I've had a number of other mom sightings since that happened. And here's the other thing is their souls are still doing work on the other side. Now, in the middle of a very unexpected meditation during COVID, it was an energetic healing that a friend of mine was leading, and I joined in, and I was in my meditation room. I just all settled in, and whoop, here comes my mom. And I'm like, oh, was not expecting you here. But energetically, she came in and she said to me, she said, I failed you the most. I'm so sorry. And so that's the other thing is their souls basically are still doing work on the other side, and our souls are doing work on the other side, even if we're in human form. So we have these different levels of who we are. So that's where that spirit and higher self part of us comes in at the same time as we're still living our human condition. And so when she came into me and she said, it came into my field and said, wow, I failed you the most. Um, it was the point that I needed to help unhook even more of the healing between my relationship with her and the karmic layers that were there. But see, that's how this stuff works. It happens in layers. Yeah, it happens in layers for sure. So, for instance, again, it can be, I'm going to flip this so I can see other people's faces in case there's another hands up. So we can be having very challenging relationships with someone, and all of us, is there anybody in here who doesn't have challenging relationships with someone? Hello, that's what we're here for. And boy, are we going to talk about that when we get to the psychological or the social branch and the interpersonal branches, because there's all this soul stuff I'm going to bring to the surface for you guys. But 99%, I think, of what we're supposed to learn comes from the other souls in our life. And so we can be looking, I'm thinking about the people who are going into counseling training right now or who are counselors. You're going to be taught just the human condition aspect of what happens in those relationships and why they happen, and you're going to learn real basic kind of stuff, but then knowing this soul stuff is going to take you so much further and realizing that those human dynamics are there to help you learn and heal so much more. So yes, those mom energies, those dad energies, those brother energies, those spouse energies, whatever it might be, um, they are here to help us learn and evolve, even though it is unpleasant at best. So, okay. Yes, Ginny.
This might be what we're going to learn. I mean, it
No, you're
probably is.
fine.
But if if soul is the quiet voice within, the source of gut instinct, how is it able to be so influenced from other souls, from heart, from regret, from how is it able to hold us back if it is like this true seed
Yeah.
of the true essence of us?
Great question. So I'm visual. So I'm just gonna try to see if I have anything I can use as a prop. Let me do it this way. So if this is your soul and you have, I'm just gonna use this stack of paper. If you have, let me see if I can do this way. If you, this is your soul. Oh, those aren't loose pieces of paper. Let me try this. This is your soul and you have something piled on top of you. So this is some sort of like, this is social conditioning. This is wounds that you've had from any lifetime, multiple lifetimes. So, in other words, if you keep stacking stuff on top of your soul so much that you forget who you are, or you forget basically who you are compared to those levels of wounds, then that's how it can be influenced. So it's not that the soul itself necessarily has become dismembered or pulled apart. It's just so piled up with so many different layers of things and wounds that you haven't really known how to heal. That's where the energetic imprints come in. And I'm gonna talk about that. I really wanted to set the stage today because it's going to help you understand so much of this. But if you become so buried by the human condition that you have forgotten who you are, well, then again, there's going to be so many layers of things to heal and like peel away that until you can get down to that core level, you don't feel radiant. You don't feel, and I use the word radiant, you don't feel that inner light. And so oftentimes the soul is described as that light within, but how many of us feel real light? I mean, we feel dark, we feel heavy, we feel, I'll go back to, let me get one of my props here. We feel this. We feel bedraggled and weary and like our leaves have fallen off. And we feel like something has really shaken that whole thing to the point where even our soul is weary. Our soul is just so tired and weary. And I call that intrinsically tired. And so, then as practitioners, the goal is to get it feeling a little better. So you unbury some things, you get this kind of tidied up to the point where how a person can start to re-experience themselves for who they really are. And then they start sprouting new growth again. And then it becomes more rich and vibrant. And so then that's where you can get to be very much more rich and full. And this is exactly what I'm going to be teaching you over these next 6 months is how do we learn what happens within each one of these different branches from a soul perspective that buries us under or misaligns us to the point where we don't even remember ourselves anymore. And that's where, when that person asked me 12, 15 years ago, what is our mission? And I very quickly said to find ourself and keep it, find our true self, find our truth and keep it. That's what I meant is we have to find our true soul. And really, I think that is why, and I said this just a few minutes ago, that's why I think trauma is such a big thing right now, is that we are here to clear the slate. We are here to start unburying our souls, releasing all of this stuff, feeling more vibrant, feeling more aligned, finding our inner light, finding that voice again. Because centuries, well, thousands of years ago, when civilizations first lived on the planet, they didn't have all the baggage that we have. They didn't have the rubbish. They didn't have all this stuff laying on us. And so this is what we're here to do is clean that out. That'll make sense. Does that help you understand that? Yeah. And so the idea of the fractured soul, we can become fractured as well. So it's like lightning. Well, actually, I do have, I'll show you this in a second. So this notebook is all of the different graphics I have from 18 years of working with my graphics person. And I have many, many I'll show you. But And I'm going to try to find the one I'm looking for. The whole idea of having a broken branch, we can actually have damage within one or more of these branches. Here's one. So we can actually have soul fractures. This is just an example of one of the fractured branches. We can have soul fractures that are related to a particular branch in the tree that actually point to where the healing needs to take place. And that can happen from perhaps let me show you this one too, because this will help. So this one is like a broken financial branch and a broken sexual branch over here. So if you have a broken branch of the tree that points directly at one of the typical particular branches, the financial and sexual branch, if you don't heal that, the rest of the tree can't feel radiant. And the idea is sometimes you have to go back to the soul level to figure out what it is that's broken in order for the entirety of the tree to heal. So this whole path of understanding this model is going to help you get there and help clients get there for the most part too. But yeah, so the soul itself can get buried under, and that's the whole point. It can get buried under the human condition. It can get buried under, if we're going to talk about ancestral kinds of things, if we think back to 100 years ago, there was a pandemic in 100 years ago. So what did people go through? If you think about 200 years ago, 300 years ago, there were wars, there were famines, there were plagues, there were all kinds of different things. There were women in general, female souls have had to endure so much over the lifetimes and generations. So much sexual trauma, so much emotional trauma, so much suppression. So the feminine soul, which again, ironically or not so ironically, is where this age of Aquarius is going. It's that whole opening to the feminine energies. Well, females have to heal what they've carried along in those lifetimes in order to really come into the Aquarian age to really feel that feminine energy. So returning to the divine feminine has all to do with healing the stuff that's been piled up on us. So many layers. So many layers. Does that all make sense? Any thoughts, any questions, reactions? Is anybody overwhelmed? I hope not, but it's a lot.
I have a question.
Okay, let me find who's speaking. Who is it? I'm sorry.
Jen.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to find you on here. Okay, there you are. Yep.
Hey. So my question is, if souls exist also in the spiritual realm, do I understand that correctly? Can souls be split, or can you have souls that exist, like a similar soul existing at the same time?
So, okay, those are two different questions. So yes, so can a soul split? So, okay, so this gets tricky. There are theories that souls get split and they break off. Now, do I believe that they break off and live two separate existences? I don't believe that. Now, I would love to hear from other people. Even with a twin flame, which we're going to talk about later, twin flame experience, the early understanding or stories were that one soul split off and that you're constantly trying to find your mate. That doesn't make any sense to me. That doesn't feel right to me. That doesn't make sense. Can they split off? There can be a fragment of a soul that attaches to a live soul and negatively influences them along the way. Is it the entirety of the soul? No, but you can have a fragment. Now, you can also have, well, let me answer that later. Your second question was?
Just if they could live at the same time. So if you had souls that were split, could you live in the same timeline?
So, I'm trying to make sure understanding your question. So, if there's a soul that's split, can they live in the same timeline? So, I personally don't believe that a split or a person or a soul will split into two separate entities. What they would do is they would function without that part of them that makes them whole.
Mm.
So, my experience and my understanding of pure energy is you can't split a soul in half. You can't split a soul in a quarter, but that soul can basically live without that part of them feeling fully intact. And it's kind of going back to the wounded soul. There's a shriveled up branch kind of, but they cannot really fully live in that way. I will say that I do believe that time folds over on itself. So in other words, that's why souls can, like, that's why I can have this experience with my mother living in this other dimension, and she's off doing her own thing. I'll probably never run into her in this lifetime from a human perspective, but that there are different realities that are happening all at once.
Yes, that's the other part. That's what I'm trying to figure out,
Yeah.
how that layering works.
Yeah, it folds over on itself. That's the easiest way I can help you understand
Okay.
it, is that time folds over on itself so we can have multiple experiences at the same time. Um, and going back to when my mom said to me or asked me, "Will you be my guide?" I was like, okay, at the time I was like, I didn't know as me doing what I'm doing, I could come be a guide to you in that lifetime. But actually there's a term for it. There's actually a spiritual term for it, and I did not know the term at the time. And the other thing is your soul can, this can sound really bizarre, but your soul can actually go visit another human on this planet. You don't know your soul is doing that, but it can do that. I had that experience with someone about 4 years ago where he called me or he emailed me and he said, "Your soul visited me last night and guided me." I'm like, "What?" And then like literally a week later, I learned the term for it. So it's like, okay, well, so I'm learning what this stuff is. But yes, you can have these multiple layers of experiences.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's very confusing, but all important. What else can I answer for you? Let me say this is your brains are going to be like blown open, but we're going to bring it back down to earth as we go because this is like the way out there stuff. And it's important to know this. But basically, I'm going to bring it down into a tangible place when we really talk through. Well, some people wouldn't call it a tangible place when we talk about the soul period, but I am going to bring it down into a different place for all you.
I just have a comment,
Yeah, Mara,
if that's okay.
please.
Yeah, so that was hi. Yeah, that was about the intuition aspect that you're talking about. And I actually just covered this in my biology of trauma. We did grief and gut health. And yeah, it's like the interoception from your vagus nerve. That the signals of the baseline safety and just your learned experiences, and that's how trauma can also disrupt that you know you might go into unsafe situations and be like, this is okay, but it's because that's dysregulated.
Yeah.
So, but again, it might be the pineal gland as well. I just thought I would add that.
Well, and I love the research that's coming out about the vagal nerve because it's a memory system. It is an absolute memory system. And I think once people start connecting, again, I'm going to call it an energetic imprint, which I'm going to explain very shortly.
Mm-hmm.
Our bodies are like primed to receive energetic information. And the vagal nerve, body memory in general, is all about where and how does that energetic imprint of the wound, the trauma, the experience, whatever, where does that land? And the vagal nerve information is really fascinating because that's, I think, where we can bring the science and the woo together. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And for those, actually, you can be teacher for a second. Do you want to tell the people in the group a little bit about what the vagal nerve is?
Sure. Yeah, your vagus nerve is one of your main processing system. It goes all the way from your your brain stem to the base of your gut. It has branches off into your throat, and all the way down. So that's why people can find soothing through eating, singing, humming. There's lots of stimulation there.
Mhm.
And it really controls so much about your entire nervous system and what parasympathetic, sympathetic, just how y you receive basically all your sensory stimulation. Yeah.
Perfect. Wonderful. And there's a lot of great research coming out about depression and anxiety in the vagal system, which is fascinating. And also, if you think back to, I don't know how many of you watched the movie by Temple Grandin like 15 years ago about how to soothe people who are on the spectrum. She focused all of her information on the vagal nerve because basically compressing the system, like really holding the system, helps
Mhm.
calm everything. And so, it is fascinating. And then I would say that's another way that we have these energetic imprints of trauma, that's where it lands. It lands somewhere in the system. And that's one way to explain it is through the vagal nerve information. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else? And see, this is why I think it's going to be really helpful for people to share because we can weave in a lot of things. Any other questions or ponderings about the soul? Because I know this is big stuff that we've never, like most people have never really explored. And for
Would
those,
you
yeah, go ahead, Jenny.
would you say in IFS the self, the capital S self that we're trying to get back to, is that the soul?
It's the intellectualized version of the soul.
Or
Yeah, Schwartz, I think this is the thing. There are intellectual versions of the soul. And 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 this is my bias with this, and I admit that this is a bias, is that I think there are a lot of people who try to explain it because they want to understand it, but until they experience it, they don't realize it's different. But it's the self is sort of the intellectual version of, or excuse me, the self, the big self, is the intellectualized version, but it's not the entirety of the soul. Yeah, Carol, I saw you nod. Would you agree with that? Okay. Yeah. And I want to mention something about IFS in a second. Anybody else want to comment on that? Okay. I want to mention, someone mentioned internal family systems and how this is related. So Kim, you were the one that mentioned that. Yeah. So internal family systems, for those who don't know, is basically the concept by Richard Schwartz. Richard Schwartz? Oh gosh, now I'm blanking. Schwartz, I know it's Schwartz. There's another, it's Robert Schwartz. There's another Robert Schwartz out there. It's totally different stuff. But Richard Schwartz basically created this theory of internal family systems that basically is kind of like the split off aspects of us that form because of different key events in our lives. So we can have the young child, we can have the professor, we can have the practitioner, we can have the female, and we have all these different quote parts. And I do believe that it relates to the soul, but he doesn't take it deeply enough, as far as I'm concerned, because it's the soul's fractured imprint to me that creates each one of those different aspects that he talks about. And for me, it's like if you can go just a little deeper and help people understand that that is the soul, not just the psyche splitting those things off, it can take you so much further in the healing. And so even multiple personalities in many cases are soul based. You will learn, those of you who are going into the psychological field, you will learn that multiple personalities are split off aspects of who we are according to trauma. But if you really go to the soul level, you'll realize it's because the soul was fractured at such a deep level and a profound level. But if you can understand the essence of bringing that into integration, that person feels whole again. So it's not them learning to manage the different parts like a lot of those theories try to say. It's really about let's bring this into a whole soul again. So internal family systems is a big part. I think it's a segue into doing some of the psychological care from a soul-based perspective. It's not everything though. So anything else? How many people's minds are blown so far? A couple. Yeah, it's a lot. But we're actually going to, again, bring this back full circle to helping you understand how to make this tangible for yourselves. I just felt like we needed to dive into all this. Okay. Any other questions? So we're going to weave in more information about this and how this all fits. But I want to talk about energy. And energy is such a cool topic. And you don't have to work for an electric company. It's a totally different kind of energy. Actually, it's not totally different. It's just a different frequency. But I want to demonstrate this. And I want to teach you how to sense energy, because this is going to be key in helping you move forward and also helping you understand your own reactions, your own, if you're out in public, you're going to be sensing people's energy and you're going to be like, why am I feeling uncomfortable? It's all energy. So actually, I want to have you all unmute your mics, if that's okay, because we're going to do a group. Not really, it's an individual experience, but it'll be done by a group perspective. Okay, perfect. Okay, so let me ask you this first. How many of you have had some sort of energy healing session done for you? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 7 of you. Okay. So let me explain energy healing, and then I'm going to teach you a very basic way to start to understand energy. So everything is energy. And basically, so this pen is energy, any stones that I have sitting around are energy, my notebook's energy, the computer's energy, my candle's energy. Anything that is around us is a different frequency of energy. What happens with energy healing is that an energy practitioner learns how to tune into and understand the energetic composition of a person and an energetic, like the different layers of how they function. So you may have heard about the chakra system. You don't have to know about that right now, but the chakras are basically energy centers that are throughout the body that help you understand what's going on with you from a human condition perspective when you understand which one of those chakras is balanced or unbalanced. Again, don't need to know all that. But there's these different levels of energy. There's these different layers of energy that are in our field. So we can have the human body, but we have all these different layers of energy. And so it's like when you're standing too close to someone and it feels uncomfortable, it's because your energetic body is like, ooh, wow, I'm too close to that person. So you're already sensing the fact that, whew, I don't like that. When you're with someone that has beautiful energy, what do you want? You want to get closer to them. So it's really as simple as that. Right now, the energies in the world are very, very strong. So any of you who are tired all the time, it's just because in some ways you need to pull your energetic field in, all of that. I could talk about energy forever and not teach you everything. But what energy healers do is they can intuitively and energetically sense within your body where there is coagulated energy, where there is blockages, where there's energy moving too fast, where there's energy that is kind of clogged up or sluggish. And they can help you work through that process of rebalancing that. And I'll tell you, I started learning about energy when I was I was 26 years old, 26 or 27 years old. So almost 30 years ago. And wild stuff. And I'll tell you how it happened. A fellow student knew that I was really stressed. She came up, she said, hey, turn around. And she put her hands over my shoulders and kind of up through my neck because I had a really tight neck. And she was doing energy work and I could feel like a fire coming out of her hand. I'm like, okay, I don't know what that is, but it's pretty cool. And then everything just released. And then basically my neck relaxed. I had I could move it a lot more. And then we started talking that she was doing some form of, she was doing Reiki on me at the time. So I started going to energy healers when I moved for my internship. The beauty about understanding even a smidge of energy is that you will start to understand the soul so much more, because if you consider the soul to be just a wad of energy, and I'll say a wad of energy because we have all this stuff that goes into it, all those residues of our wounds and everything else. But if you understand the soul as energy, you're going to understand why you feel really tired and deflated at times. You're going to understand why someone is very vibrant. One of my dogs, it's the one that's laying right there, although she's totally sacked out because I walked her this morning. I call her my joy bomb. And this dog has, like, I swear it's one of her first lifetimes. She's a very young soul dog. She doesn't have a whole lot of baggage. She doesn't have rubbish. She doesn't have anything on her. She's just this, like, wide open, beautiful soul. And I call her my joy bomb. And her light is just bright all the time. I can feel that energy. My other dog, I got her at 2.5, and I'm pretty sure she was abused because she's got this fearful energy to her. She's very loving, but she's tentatively loving. And to me, she's loving because she knows me, but she's very hesitant. They all have different energies. And if you think about the energies of the people that are closest to you, just to think about it without understanding the energy in general, you can kind of scan through those people and go, oh, wow, that person has really good energy. That person doesn't have such good energy. And so there's different frequencies of energy. That'll make sense? Okay, so I'm going to teach you a very basic way to start sensing energy. So I'm going to do it first. What you're going to do is I'm going to take my rings off, actually. You don't have to take your rings off, but it'll be easier. You're going to rub your hands together. And then you're going to clap. And then put your hands a little bit far away from each other, and then just start playing with, like, what you're sensing as you bring them closer and pulling them out. And closer and pulling them out. And so try not to think through your head. Sense through what your hands are doing. Okay, so do it one more time. Rub. Clap. And then just sense. So I can see the rest of you in here.
Yeah, I do this in Qigong. We make Qi balls and do different things with it.
Yes, exactly. Qigong, Tai Chi. I mean, they use a lot.
I do both, yeah, and Reiki, and all that. Yeah.
My dogs are like, what are you clapping for? You woke me. Okay, so I'm going to have you do it again. So what I'm going to have you do this time is I'm going to have you rub your hands. I'm going to have you clap. And I'm going to have you actually close your eyes to sense, because a lot of times you're trying to look too hard to figure it out. But I just want you to feel, and I'm going to walk you through what you may be feeling. And I'm going to help you try to tune into it. And one of my sensitive soul dog is up by me. So I'm sorry, did I disturb you? Okay, so rub your hands, keep your eyes closed. Clap. Bring your hands apart. Slowly pull them together a little bit. Just slowly pull them back apart and just sense. I'm going to shut up for a minute because I want you to just sense what may be happening for you. So first of all, you're probably noticing some tingling, partially just because you literally have smacked your hands together and you're waking up the sensors. Hands are probably feeling a little warmer. Some of you may also already be feeling like the sensation of taffy pulling when you pull your hands apart. It's like this energetic taffy pulling. And then when you bring your hands back together, it's almost like it's condensing more into a ball. You can pull your hands back apart. And bring them back together. I'm going to have you do that again. So rub your hands, clap, bring your hands apart, bring it together. Just notice what your sensations are at the moment. And try to get out of your head. I know it's really hard if you've never done this before because you try to think your way through it, but just sense what's happening between your hands. Okay, I'm going to have you open your eyes for just a second, and I'm going to have you do this again in just a moment. So what are you sensing? And it's okay if you don't feel anything yet, because sometimes it just takes a while to tune in. But what are you sensing? What are you feeling?
I definitely felt the taffy feeling.
Yeah.
Okay. That was Susan.
Feels like a Tesla ball looks, like.
Yeah. Yeah. What else?
Like different densities.
Yeah. It felt like a squeeze box to me almost. It like
Yes.
got lighter and dense, heavier.
Yes. What else?
Had an urge to want to squish it, but didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like one of those well, I'm gonna disclose something real quickly with what I have. People have stress balls. I have a spaceship stress squishy thing. I'm real into spaceships and aliens because I think they're our friends. But it's like that whole idea of, you do want to play with it. Once you sense it, you want to play with it. So anything else, and then I'm going to have you do it again. I'm going to have you do something different with it. But what else?
Energetic kind of strings almost connecting your hands. You can just feel this almost electrical.
I
Had
did.
it sparks or something. Yeah.
I was
I felt a
thinking,
pull. I felt a pull in between my hands.
you know those things where you used to play with your
Yeah.
friends?
Cat's cradle.
Yes.
Yeah.
I kind of felt a resistance when my hands got so
Mhm.
close, like there was a
Yeah.
ball or something, the
Yeah.
energy, and it was like I was not going to be able or didn't want to push it all the way together.
Mhm.
Perfect. Yeah, because that means you're sensing that. And it's just like that. Again, my round ones are at the office, but my it's like you can only get it so far and it's not going any further. But that's really good to understand because this is also, I'm going to give you a quick tip for those of you who are empaths. If you can learn to pull the energies in when there's a lot of stress around you, you can filter out a lot of the stuff that's happening around you. So when I go to grocery stores, I try to pull my energy in. I go to Costco, I pull my energy in. If I'm out in nature, I've got it wide open because I want to bring in nature. I want to bring that energy in. So you have to kind of play with that to see what may be different. Any other comments?
I wasn't a fan of the clapping. I kind of stopped hitting so hard the longer we went on. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, you already had it activated. Yeah, you already had it
Mhm.
activated. And so that's the thing is like once you get used to it, you don't even need to
Yeah.
to activate it. But it's a good way to get your sensations, tuning in. Anybody else
And
have a
then
hard time?
I was just taught through a lot of years of Qigong and Tai Chi that you can also feel the inner hands in your Dantian
Yes.
doing the same motion.
Yes.
And also your hands are connected to your heart. So there's
Yeah.
energetic connection there too.
I could feel movement in mine, almost like I was holding a ball that was like moving on the inside,
Mhm.
if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah. So the energetic, yeah, and that's the whole point. On Tuesday, I'm going to show you an image of something. I didn't bring it today on purpose, but I'm going to show you an image of something that a client of mine from years ago painted after I did a soul session with her. And she went back and she's an artist. She went and she gave it to me, which was really a blessing. But she painted this I don't want to give it away too much because I'm going to do this on Tuesday to help teach you more about the energetic experience in the soul, because it really is about bringing that energy into alignment with yourself. And when you learn that, it's like, oh, now I know what's happening. I'm feeling misaligned, but now we have to figure out what's misaligning you. So yeah, so there is like this spherical kind of energy that's constantly moving in there. Absolutely. What else?
Well, I
And
don't know. Oh,
go ahead, Kim.
I don't know if this really goes with, well, it does because it's energy. My wife actually bought me a, lapis raw necklace, and it's wrapped, so I would spend time and I would hold it while I'm doing other things. It's just something that I would do, and every now and then I'd be like, I feel something, but I just let it go. And then I started thinking, well, maybe it's the wrapping moving while I'm holding it. And then so I took it out of the wrapping and held it, and I was like, oh my gosh, no, actually I just
Yeah,
feel not feel the rock, but I feel the energy coming off of it.
yeah.
Yes, it's like this little energy.
That is what stone healing is all about, is that every stone has a different energetic composition and they're meant to be used for different things. And lapis is actually it's one of the higher intuitive kind of stones, and it's somewhat grounding, but it's intuitive. So lapis is often used for building intuition. And so, I've got stones all over the house, but, I have this little, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. I have this different collection just right here, depending on what I might need or want. But yeah, every stone has a different energetic quality to it. Every essential oil has a different energetic quality to it. So, really, what you're doing when you learn energy is you're learning how to work with your environment, work with everything around you to help you fine tune what's healthiest for you and your own soul, and also learn what needs to be kind of peeled away or taken off. So imagine this, and this is something that I teach people, even if I never talk about the soul with them. But when people are super stressed and they feel burdened by it, a lot of times I will encourage them to go out for a walk and imagine themselves to be caked with dried, thick mud. And then I have them walk and I have them imagine chunks of that mud being peeled off and released. And I tell them, just imagine and sense those chunks falling off and sense that to be peeled off. And don't stop walking until it's all cleared. And it's another form of teaching how we have to peel off layers of the human condition and release those energetic layers and residues that get stacked up on us so that we can free up and open up that energy of the soul so that we can actually, again, I call it airing out the soul. So it's just another way to help people. It's a way to help people who don't have the soul language understand how to work with their soul. So there's all these little tricks of the trade to help them. You know what you're doing, but they don't, if they're not someone who ascribes to the soul language, you don't ever have to bring up the word soul. You can just basically use these different concepts. Another thing, and for those of you who do Qigong or it's mostly a Qigong technique, is that if you're really stressed or really anxious or really even angst filled, one of the easiest and best ways, and I would encourage doing this outside, not inside, and I'll tell you why, is that when you're walking to your car or walking through a parking lot, whatever, as you're walking, we walk like this, as your hand goes behind you, flick your hand. Because what you're doing is you're releasing that energy behind you. Now, again, I'm not going to do it very much in here because you actually want to do it outside where the energies can dissipate. You don't want it coagulating in your house. But it's like you flick as you're walking and you're imagining yourself releasing that energy. And it's a wonderful Qigong move. It's a wonderful move to just help you release. Again, you know that it's helping clean out some of the staticky energy, some of the residue that gets piled up in our human condition. But there's all these different methods you can use to clean your energy field. And Some of it is essential oils, some of it is stones, but the more active you can be by, understanding your energy, flicking behind you. Why do you think dogs get up and shake? They get up to not only wake themselves up, but to kind of shake off energies. So if humans would do that more often, they would feel a lot lighter. They would feel like they were not being stacked up with those levels of the human condition. Does that all make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Super easy, super quick kind of tasks you can use. So I want to go back to the question, which I think it was a good question, Jenny, is that how can your soul feel if your soul is pure, how can it feel unpure? Well, it's those layers that get later on you. So if you think about and Jenny, I'm going to bring this up. I know you live near the hurricane zone. Oh my gosh, the layers, and actually, Barbara, you do too. So the layers of sediment that got washed because of that flood had to be cleaned away. You couldn't see the sidewalks anymore. You couldn't see the trees anymore. You couldn't see anymore. So it's just that same concept of when we have human condition stuff that happens, when we have trauma, when we have stress, we get layered, 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 layered. We get sediment on top of us. We get mud on top of it, smutty energy. And we have to clean that out. And that is a lot where, let me see where I put mine. I have too many things laying around here. That's where that, I moved them already. There it is. That's where these come in, is that when there's too many layers of the human condition that are unhealthy for us, they get layered upon us energetically, and we have to figure out how to release those. That makes sense? And so that's why I want you to practice this whole kind of moving this kind of energy ball, because we're going to use this on Tuesday night. But this is the concept that I want you to explore, is that we have to clean out the residue that is laying on the soul that's keeping us from our radiant light. And that gets stacked up in so many ways. It can be lifetime experiences, or it can be this lifetime of experiences. And to me, that's why I talk about evolving, not just healing, because I want people to evolve beyond where they were and understand from a conscious perspective how they can get themselves feeling lighter and brighter and more vibrant and radiant. Does that all make sense?
Mm-hmm.
What's so funny, real quick, the whole energy movement. After each client, I do a sweep of the room and send it out, but I never thought to do a sweep within myself and move it out. But
Yes.
there it is now.
Yeah. So a couple quick tips with it is to do that energy sweep, but have open a window. Like,
Yes.
you don't want that sticking around and all you're doing is move it around in your own space. So open a window if you can to clear that out. But yeah, it's important to do that cleaning. And like I said, I have 7 different essential oil blends right here, because one of them is called Kick-Ass Karma Clear that I created. And you gotta clean the energy sometimes. But another one is called Empath's Armor, and I use that one a lot to just keep there's an oil in there called Angelica that I use. And Angelica is like this big angel that comes up, puts its wings around you and says, I'm going to keep that shit off of you. So there's energetic oils that you can use. There's stones you can use. There's lots you can use to clean that energy. But if you think about, and these are very unclinical and unpsychological and unsoulful terms that I'm about to use, if you can look at yourself or the people you're working with as, I need to help them unmuck their souls. Our souls get mucked up. That's why we feel anything less than radiant.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
my analogy to explain that for my clients is to let them imagine themselves as a shining diamond.
yeah.
And then it's layered with layers and layers of mud. And the work we're doing is to release those layers, to reveal what's already there, rather than have to earn it, prove it, effort for it, that they think they have to prove their worthiness,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When I do soul realignment sessions, I tell people it's like taking their soul to the body shop, where I help them understand how their soul was created, where it was created. I help them understand their dents and dings. I do a healing where I get all of those released from the karmic strand. I call them the karmic strands from the soul structure. And then basically it's like handing it back to them like squeaky clean. And it's that whole idea where sometimes our souls need work. And that's the only thing that's going to get us feeling better enough to do our human condition work. And so it is, we have so many metaphors we can use with this. It's really quite wonderful and beautiful. Yeah, perfect. Other comments, other thoughts? Perfect. Okay. All right. So for the next 20 minutes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you on a little soul journey because I want to end this with you feeling centered and grounded and aware. Now, I know very much that there's a lot of stress that everybody's carrying. And so what I want you to do is, excuse me, as I'm walking you through this, I want you to become an observer of yourself, but not be identifying with the stress that's on you or around you. And I know that's really hard because it's, we can't really fully separate ourselves. But I want to take you on a soul walk here. And I'm going to teach you some really, really basic soul skills that you can take with you. You can teach clients at any given time, but it's really some very, very basic soul skills. And I'm going to, again, embed this in some of the research. So the breathing exercise I almost always use is to have a person take a deep breath in, slow deep breath in. I count from 1 to 5. I have them hold it briefly, and I have them release on a count of 5 to 1. I have them breathe naturally, and then I do it 4 more times. The reason for that is the best way for you, the first way, let me say that the first way for you to get in touch with your soul is to regulate your nervous system. Because if you're so activated, you're keeping yourself disconnected from your soul. And it's very easy to get dysregulated in our current human condition. So I do this because the breathing in starts to play the balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, and it helps balance that out. So I will say this, some people use a count of 4s. So counting to 4, hold it for 4, release for 8. That is fine if you want to play around with that. I actually prefer the 5s. Part of that is because from a numerology perspective and an angel number perspective, 5s have a lot to do with manifesting. And so I like to kind of integrate a lot of the spiritual concepts all at once. And so I use the 5s, but if you want to practice this in between now and Tuesday and play around with it, you can do the 4s, 4, and 8. But for this beginning, I'm going to have you do deep breaths in. I always close my eyes when I'm doing this, so I'm not going to be paying attention from a visual perspective. So close your eyes if you feel comfortable. I also honestly tell people, and I know this goes against, I'm going to move my shoes here. I know this goes against what some meditation teachers teach, but I always teach feet flat on the floor, preferably with no shoes on. Because if you have rubber soles, you're actually blocking the energy between you and the earth. Even if your feet are on a floor, you're still closer than having that rubber between you and your feet. So if you can kick your shoes off. I say flat on the floor and no body parts crossed, because from an energetic perspective, if you have your hands crossed, your feet crossed, your legs crossed, your arms crossed, you're blocking energy. You're blocking that energy. I actually encourage people with a much more open posture. And I also encourage people, if you're comfortable, to put palms up rather than palms down, because it's a much more receptive, energetic posture. Okay. All right, so feet flat on the floor, no body parts crossed. Close your eyes. Just notice your breathing right now, and usually it feels a little harder to breathe when we bring it into consciousness. Just let that breath fall into its natural rhythm. In just a moment, I'm going to have you take a very slow, deep breath in. If you can match your breath in to get to your full breath when I get to 5, I'll have you hold it just briefly. And then I'll have you exhale slowly as I count backwards from 5 to 1. And all I want you to do is notice what's happening to release anything, relax into your body, and also what your attention is doing. So take that first slow, deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it. Release. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And just breathe naturally, allowing that natural rhythm of your breath to return. But also noticing that your body is settling in and relaxing and quieting. And take another slow, deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it. Release. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And again, just breathe naturally, allowing that natural rhythm of the breath to return. But also noticing whether or not you're taking a full deep breath in or if you're holding it up in your chest. And next time, see if you can take just a little bit deeper breath, pushing the air all the way down to the diaphragm. And take another slow, deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it. And release. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And just breathe naturally, allowing your system to regulate and calm even more. Your body feeling more relaxed, a little heavier, a little warmer. Noticing your mind quiet even more. And take another slow, deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it. And release. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And just breathe naturally. Noticing your body feel even more calm, more quiet, a little heavier, more relaxed. Your mind quieting even more. And one more slow, deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it. And release. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And just breathe naturally. Allowing your body to feel even more relaxed, a little more heavy, more grounded, more anchored. Your mind is even more quiet. Noticing yourself tune in more deeply to yourself. And now, without moving your head or your eyelids, I want you to pay attention to where in front of you you would be looking if your eyes were open. And it's usually somewhere in front of you, but down a little bit. And without moving your head or your eyelids, want you to move your eyes down now as if you were looking right in front of you at the floor. And you're going to notice your mind get even more quiet. You're going to notice yourself tuning inward even more. And the next step, keep your eyes closed and don't move your head, but bring your eyes down even more now as if you're looking at the top of your knees. You're going to notice your mind get even more quiet. You're going within. Again, without moving your head or your eyelids, you're going to bring your eyes down even more now as if you're looking straight down at the top of your lap, very top of your legs. I know that's an unusual position for your eyes to be in, but you're going to notice how much quieter your mind is when you do this. And one more time, without moving your head or your eyelids, you're going to bring your eyes down ever so slightly more, but this time it's almost as if you're looking from the outside deep within you. You're going to notice your focus going deep within you. You're being drawn to that core of the energy that you have within. So go toward that energy, that core, and it could seem like a ball, just an energetic center. You're going closer and closer to that ball or that energetic center. And now it's almost as if you're standing or sitting energetically right in that ball. Very deep within, you're just noticing that energetic center. You don't have to notice anything about it, what it's saying, what it's doing. The only thing, start to notice, is there color to it? Is there shape to it? Are there any symbols? Just notice visually what you're noticing. Also experience that energy, that core that's deep within. And noticing that energy, we're going to do the next step of this to help you anchor and permanently connect with that energy. So with that ball or that sphere or that energy within, you're now going to notice that that energy is reaching all the way through your tailbone, down through the chair, through the floor, all the way down to the earth. You're noticing yourself feel more and more anchored. And you keep going. That energy goes through the earth, moves all the way to the core of the earth, and it anchors itself there. You're feeling even more grounded, more quiet, more relaxed, more anchored. There's almost like an energetic pull that's pulling you downward. But all the while, you can still sense that soul energy within you, that ball of energy, that energy center. And so with that anchor deep within the earth, you're now going to notice that that ball is also extending up your spine, excuse me, up your spine, going all the way up through your neck, all the way up through the top of your head, extending all the way up into the sky, into space, into cosmos, all the way up to source energy. Even if you don't know what source energy is, just notice the energy extending as far up as you can see or sense. As you take some deeper breaths in, just notice that energy anchoring you all the way from source, all the way to the center of the earth, all the while passing through that energy deep within you and anchoring itself in both the earth all the way up to source. And you're feeling that energy within you, that energy center or that sphere or ball. You're feeling it change. You're feeling it solidify, illuminate even more, feeling it anchored. You might even feel it expanding. And you could even notice it expanding and contracting almost like it's pulsing. Just sit with that energy for just a moment, noticing whatever you're supposed to notice. Then you're going to notice those energies from source through the earth pulling back, centering again, mostly on that energy source within you, but knowing that you can connect in at any given time. You're also noticing you feel more relaxed than you've probably felt for a while, more energized. And even if you feel tired, you're feeling a new energy within you. Something has been activated, and something that's going to guide you, inform you, and protect you as we move forth on this journey. In just a moment, I'm going to have you take 3 more deep breaths in like we did before. And this time, as you count, as I count, as you're bringing that breath in, you're going to bring in that life source energy. You're going to pull that into you, bring that into that soul part of you. You're going to hold it there for those 5 seconds. And then as I have you release and count backwards from 5 to 1, you're going to be pushing out anything that you can at this moment that will help you recover and restore your own soul. So any of the residue at the moment that needs to leave, you will exhale and release those things. So take that first deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it. And release. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And just breathe naturally. Noticing yourself feel more solid and anchored, and at the same time lighter than you were before. And take another slow deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it. And release. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And just breathe naturally. Noticing yourself feel even more solid and even more connected with yourself and that inner guidance, that inner energy, all the while having released some layers of things that no longer fit for you. And take another slow, deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it. And release. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And just breathe naturally. You're noticing yourself feel much more solid and very anchored, but very open, even energized. You can start moving your feet a little bit, bringing yourself back into your body, anchoring yourself in your human way. When you're ready, you can start moving around a little bit. Any comments about what you experienced?
It was lovely.
It's very anchoring, very anchoring. So I'm going to give you lots of tools to anchor, and whether or not you realize, yes, and I will answer that in a second, Kim, whether you realize, that a lot of the soul work is very human based. It's very, very human based. It's very practical. It's very human based. But what you just did was you literally tuned in, you tuned out the human condition long enough to tune into your soul. The question that Kim said was, how do you focus when so much is happening around you? Now, my question is, and you say you always feel like a part of you is standing guard. Okay, so that I think that's a very, very, very good question. And my question to you is, do you mean literally happening around you, or do you mean energetically happening around you? Literally? Okay, because it's really hard because we are souls, we are these wads of energy, but we pick up on other people's energies. And so it is really important to figure out how you filter that out, and then also figure out, are there spaces that I can create where I would literally have space to myself to learn how to do this and anchor in, because at that point, then you can disconnect from people's energy. It's like lovingly detaching, but it's like when you're so energetically woven into other people's energy, it's really hard to do that. So this is a way of you learning how to separate your own soul's energy from other people's. And that's going to be really important moving forward. Yeah. So I think that is good. And so if you're constantly standing guard, some of that might be what you're supposed to discover about, gosh, how have I been programmed to feel like I need to protect myself or stand guard? That might be part of your soul work. And then secondly, that might be part of just getting used to your energetic system being more free and fluid in a good way, not a permeable way, but in a good way. So yeah, we can definitely go there. Any other questions or experiences or thoughts? Anybody overwhelmed? It's a lot of information. It's just a different way to think and experience. But what I'm going to be moving you through, and today and Tuesday are very experiential. We're going to weave you into how to practically apply the information, but you had to get the understanding of the energetic component of the soul in order for us to move forward. And so this is a huge, huge, huge part. So I would play with that. I would do your little clapping exercise. I would play with that. As Carol said, you can learn how to play with what's called a chi ball. And you can move it, you can shift it, you can rotate it. Learn how to do that, because basically what you're going to do is you're going to realize that inner self, that inner core of who you are, that energetic self, is moving all the time. And so it's that sphere. It's like once you get really understanding what that energy is, you're going to understand when it gets mucked up. you know, and there are ways that you will understand that when you're feeling tired, when you're feeling scattered, when you're feeling like you just can't focus, a lot of times that means there's static there. And so learning how to clear that out is going to be immensely helpful. And then that's why I wanted to start where we're starting, because then we're going to get into a lot of the practical information and a lot of the information about how the soul gets mucked up through these different branches. And that's going to help you understand how to peel those layers away as well. So, okay. So what I would encourage, if you have some time to do this, is make some notes for what you experienced, make some notes for what your reactions were, journal whatever you need to journal, practice with the ball if you can, practice with that breathing, practice with reconnecting with that source within you, connecting with that grounding exercise of anchoring with source to soul is very grounding. It's very clearing. Let me say this before we go. The eye movement is another scientific piece of this. So where we place our eyes has all to do with what part of our brain we're using. So it's called neurolinguistic processing. And with neurolinguistic processing, detectives are taught, not all detectives, but many detectives are taught this, judges are taught this, police officers are taught this, some emergency workers are taught this. But when they're asking questions, lawyers, some of them are taught, when they ask questions, they watch where a person's eyes are going, because where that person's eyes are going is the part of the brain they're accessing. So basically, if someone's lying, someone can tell with where a person's looking if they're making something up, or if they're remembering something, or if they're trying to access something from a memory. The interesting thing is, and I discovered this about 20 years ago, I was doing visualizations with people who couldn't keep their brains quiet. And I started having them bring their eyes down. And then I realized, oh my gosh, what's happening is they're getting out of their brains and they're opening the space to their souls. So it's a really cool, I just saw something happen. Something physical like a walk. Yes, like a walk, muscle relaxation activity, help you to focus. Absolutely. Anything physical will help you get out of that busy brain. And it's partially because of the fact that literally and this is a scientific piece of this, when we are in rhythmic movement, the part of our brain that is the worry brain starts to quiet and starts to shush. So basically, we can't really have as much worry and negative thoughts when we are in repetitive movement. So that is another wonderful way to do that. But the beautiful thing is with NLP, when you bring your eyes down, even though it's an awkward and unusual place to put your eyes, you're shutting off thoughts, you're quieting thoughts, and you're going straight into that soul space. So when I take you to that level where you've gotten down to the top of your legs, and then I have you kind of shoot yourself out and then back in, it's like you're going into that soul space much easier. So it's based on NLP. Play with that. If you're really stressed, if you're really thinking too much, bring your eyes down, go into that soul space, because you'll realize your mind quiets. And it's just another tool for you to shut out the world and then tune into yourself. So all of these things are based kind of in that scientific piece, but they go straight to the soul. So, okay. Lots of quiet if you can this weekend. I know that's really hard, especially with 9 children. But get a little space. Another thing I would really encourage is, I'm a big believer in salt baths. Salt baths will clean off a lot of the residue. So Epsom salt baths are actually really good at removing the emotional toxins in us. That is my mission for tonight. I do one at the end of every week. That is kind of setting the stage for the rest of my weekend. Get outside if you can, try to air out whatever you can. And like I said, I'm going to drop some things into the module, but the things that will be dropped into the module are kind of like self-reflective things. For this next session, it's going to be very experiential, and because I want us to get into that soul space, and then we're going to get into a lot more of the kind of not intellectual, but the soulful stuff that's practical. So I'll drop some stuff in. You'll get an email. And by the way, I know y'all got a weird email saying that you were done with the certification. Let me say, I think that was the universe, because I didn't touch I didn't do anything in the email system. I received that email. I'm like, what in the world? I had not been in the email system, so I have no idea how that got sent. So apparently we are looking forward 6 months, but I don't even know how that got sent because I did not set that up. That's where the universe was playing some tricks on that. So, and the only other person who has access to that is my website person, and I know she wouldn't have sent that. So I don't know where that came from. But anyway, we'll have something drop in. Does anybody have questions or thoughts that you want to part with? Okay, go play with the soul, go enjoy, go air out. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will see you Tuesday evening. I'll be sending the new Zoom link for the ones that will be used. The same Zoom link will be used for all of the Tuesday sessions. All right, all right. Thank you so much. It's beautiful to be here with you. Okay,
Thank you.
have a wonderful weekend. Perfect.